You're now listening to Directing Magic with your host, Marquette Jones.
Hello, this is Marquette Jones. I don't know why I always stutter over my own name. It's really... Anyway, hi, this is Marquette Jones, and you are listening to the Directing Magic podcast. And I know that my producer is going to ask me if I want to delete that, but I don't, because I want you guys to see the progression of me getting comfortable on the microphone. So, hi, welcome. I have a wonderful guest here with me today. It's the director and producer of Little Stones, which is a documentary that is freaking beautiful. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about her curriculum stuff, the festivals, and how life is treating her. And I definitely want to hear the origin story of this project. So that's what we're looking forward to. Thank you so much for being here, Sophia, sometimes called Sophie. Which one are we going with tonight?
You can do Sophie. My friends call me Sophie.
Sophie, I have another friend. Yes. The last person that was here, I was like, you're about to be my bestie. And she's like, I am. Yes, I like making new friends, and I love your docs. So don't tell me, tell everyone else, what is Little Stones about?
So Little Stones follows 4 women who are using art for social change all over the world. So I went to India, Brazil, Senegal, and Kenya and filmed different women who are using graffiti and music and fashion to deal with various women's issues.
And there's a rapper.
Yeah.
The first Senegalese female rapper, Sister Phan.
Yeah, she was the first woman to really break out in the music scene and the hip-hop scene in Senegal. And she was 18 or 19 years old when she sort of skyrocketed to fame in Senegal. And now she actually lives in Berlin, and she tours throughout Europe and West Africa. And she uses music to talk about genital cutting and child marriage. And these are issues that are really taboo. So she uses music as a kind of way to get people to talk about stuff they normally wouldn't talk about, but in a way that's not confrontational. It's in a really sort of community-focused and fun way. She puts on concerts.
So one of the first questions that I have for you is how did you choose your subjects for this project?
So,
because they're so different. I mean, they all do beautiful things in terms of the fashion and the graffiti and what did I forget, and the rapping and whatever else. But they're all over the world. So how did you find, these internationally wonderful women?
Yeah. So you forgot dance, and dance is how it all started.
Dance, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and which is really beautiful. The movement stuff is really dope. Okay, I'm going to stop saying beautiful because I think you guys get it, but stunning work.
I'm glad you think it's beautiful. I think if our cinematographer was here, she would really appreciate that. She tried to capture, the beauty and the color and what was sort of unique to the culture of all these communities that we were in a really visual way. So we didn't have to set it up with voiceover or anything like that. It's just immediately you're in each one of these places. But so the film started with Sohini. She's an Indian dancer in Kolkata. And about 20 years ago, she went into a shelter for sex trafficking survivors. And she just started learning about this issue. And as a trained dancer, she immediately thought there must be a way to connect dance with physical healing when you're talking about sexual trauma. So these girls were really disconnected from their bodies. They didn't love their bodies. They were really sort of hating their bodies. And she just thought dance would be a beautiful way to help them learn to love their bodies again and get back into their bodies. So a friend of mine was doing a Fulbright in India, and she came back and she told me about this woman, and it just clicked for me immediately because I had been a dancer from my whole life. As long as I can remember, I was in ballet shoes, and then I switched to modern later. But it just totally resonated with me. And at the time, I was working for PBS and doing documentaries and kind of looking for my next passion project that would be, something I could really sink my teeth into. And that led me on a quest of trying to find other women who are also using art in different ways. And so then I found Penmela in Brazil, who's this Brazilian graffiti artist, and she is raising awareness about domestic violence. So this very traditionally or so-called private issue, she is literally putting it up in the most public way possible on the walls and streets of her city. And something that I learned in the process was in Brazil, graffiti is everywhere, and it's vibrant and it's colorful, and it's not the way we think of graffiti in the U.S., which is like scribbles on walls or writing your own name in black paint or something like that. It's like these incredible murals that are...
That's how some people think of graffiti here, not everybody.
Yeah, right?
But yeah. Continue, sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think it's changing in the U.S., and we're starting to see more and more murals, but in Brazil, it's like, it's been that way for a long time, and there's this awesome street culture there that has totally embraced the kind of graffiti art that Penmela does. So she is considered one of the best graffiti artists in Brazil, which is
a big deal.
Which is a huge deal, and to be a woman that is really recognized in this completely male-dominated field is also pretty remarkable. And beyond the awareness that she does to in her own work, she also goes into high schools and she works with high school kids to get them to talk about domestic violence. And she's like, no one would come if I was just trying to have a conversation about domestic violence. But if I can go and teach them how to do graffiti, everyone wants to come, including the boys. So you see these high school boys who show up and they're totally engaged talking about domestic violence and these like really serious cultural problems. But then they go outside and they learn how to do graffiti after, and it's fun, and they all take pictures with Penmela, and it's just this really cool experience for them.
One of my, what first attracted me to your project was the graffiti aspect of it, because I'm working on a project that's about a female graffiti artist. But then me working on that project stemmed from a friend of mine who just finished her PhD in using graffiti art as an educational tool. Shout out to Beatriz Rodriguez in San Antonio, Texas. But that was the thing that she talks a lot about in terms of using this art form as a way to really open up people's minds to different ways of living and kind of expressing themselves. So I was really like, yes, I want to talk to her about that piece. But then I saw it and there's all this other super cool stuff. So you found the woman in Calcutta first, and then the Brazilian woman, and then you said, what continent do I go to next?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Then it was Sister Pha. I mean, the mold had been set with those first two women. Here's, very specific art forms that can talk about specific issues. And I really wanted to include music. That was important to me. And so at that point, I had this huge spreadsheet of all these incredible musicians who were working on different issues. But when I talked to Sister Pha in our first Skype call, she has this larger-than-life personality, which was totally what grabbed me. She's a survivor of genital cutting, and she has completely dedicated her life to trying to eradicate the practice, which is just really tough to do because of it being taboo, as I mentioned earlier. But also, it's just not fully understood in the communities why not to do it. It's considered a really positive aspect of culture. It's sort of a rite of passage for young girls. And so mothers and grandmothers have their girls cut, and the men aren't really involved. So I thought that...
Wait.
Yeah, we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah. Wait, really?
Yeah, so it's surprising. So genital cutting, it goes back to, they think, the ancient Egyptians, and it was started by the pharaohs who were, wanting to sort of control the chastity of women. But over time, it evolved into this sort of status symbol. So all of the pharaohs' wives were cut, and so then it became this cultural norm that just women, to make their daughters eligible for marriage and beautiful and clean and all of that, they needed to be cut. And so the practice sort of spread out of that. And it's different in everywhere you go. So it can range from like a symbolic prick to being really horrific. And so there's a lot of misunderstandings within communities of why it shouldn't be done, because it's considered to be a really positive aspect of culture in a lot of ways.
Almost a status symbol, it sounds like.
Yeah, now it's not so much a status symbol. It's like if you aren't cut in certain communities where it's practiced, then you are kind of ostracized. Like you're considered dirty. You're not likely to get a husband. And so it's
And are people still concerned about getting husbands? I'm just asking for a friend.
Yeah. I mean, in Senegal, it was, multiple wives for men. They have.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're off track.
We
again.
totally are.
So Sister Pha was your third addition to it. And then how did you find your fourth subject?
So at that point, I knew I wanted to talk about the economics of all of it. So when you have these deeply entrenched issues like trafficking or genital cutting or domestic violence, a huge issue is just that women aren't able to get out of violent situations because they don't have the economic resources. So that opened up this whole can of worms because there's so many incredible artisans and co-ops and collectives that are, creating crafts and different things to support themselves, and just really incredible stories. But I was drawn to this woman named Anna Taylor, who's a fashion designer from Arkansas, and she's
from Arkansas?
Yeah, she's from Little Rock originally. Yeah. But she went to Kenya when she was in high school with her family, and she worked in an orphanage there. She went to high school for a couple of years in Kenya. And she knew that she wanted to not just volunteer, but she was thinking it's also, I really want to, give people options for a livelihood. So create jobs. And when she was still in college, she decided to hire a woman who really needed a job in Kenya to produce some of her clothing designs. And she started selling them back home and sending the money back to Kenya to this woman. And out of that, she transformed that one particular woman's life. But then she started to grow her business. And with the proceeds, she started a training program. So now she's had, I think, 3 classes of women go through this training program where they spend 18 months and they become certified Kenyan tailors. Wow. And then they do job placement stuff with them. She hires some of them to work on her clothing line. And she's an incredible designer. So she showed at New York Fashion Week before she even graduated from college, from the University of Arkansas. And she sells at Dillard's department stores now. She's kind of a rising star in the fashion world, and she's just doing it all so she can continue to fund.
What's the name of her brand?
It's called Judith and James. Mm-hmm. I should have worn one of her shirts tonight. Her stuff's really cool.
I thought this was, she has on this really cute black dress with a print. Maybe you'll see the picture on Instagram. But but I thought this might have been one of her designs. It's not?
No, it's not.
Sorry.
Yeah, her stuff is awesome, Judith and James. Yeah. So that was the sort of missing piece. I wanted to talk about the economics of it, and just thought it would be neat to follow someone who's pretty early in her career. So I really got to see, Anna transform over the course of the 3 years that we filmed with her. So we filmed at New York Fashion Week when she was 23 years old, and she was... I don't think naive is the right word, but she wasn't totally able to articulate what it would mean if her business failed to the women in Kenya. And by the time, I saw her at the very end of shooting, so she was our first shoot and our last, she was much more self-reflective and thoughtful and had, 3 very formative years when 23 to 26 years old. You change a lot. And so it was just really neat to see her grow. And I think a way I didn't get to see the other women grow because they're more established in what they're doing. So your overall process of shooting this documentary was about 3 years total? Production, yeah. How long was post? It was sort of ongoing. So, started editing in the fall of 2015 and were completely locked and submitting to festivals by fall of 2016. So about a year in post. Okay. That's a lot. It's a lot of time, but I've been told that is not a lot of time for documentary post-production. Yeah, if you're comparing it to narrative, it's like a totally different world because the writing process is in post. Yeah. So the development is really important because you're picking your characters and figuring out what your story is, but you go out and you shoot and your story changes when you get to know people and you see more what their life is like and they open up to you more. So for me, at least, the post is so important in the writing process. So
So you lived with this project for 4 years, or would you say 5? Was there like a year of development sort of stuff before you started production?
It was about 4 years because the development was about a year, but then the post and the last year of production sort of overlapped. We did a few pickup shoots at the end.
That's a long time to be with a project.
I'm still with it.
Right. Now you're on to the film festival part. So I know that you've done a lot of film festivals. You guys are internationally screening. Which one so far has been your favorite?
Wow, it's really hard to pick. I mean, we won an award at our first festival, which was in Vail. So to like right out of the gate be named the best documentary was pretty incredible.
Sure.
We were totally sold out at our West Coast premiere at Newport Beach, which was really cool. That is a huge festival. So we didn't get to meet as many filmmakers. I think in Vail it was a really warm, intimate experience, and we were sort of up in the mountains with this small group of filmmakers for the whole weekend, so it was really nice to get to know folks. But yeah, it was really fun in Newport. And then in Greenwich too, so we went to a newer festival that I think people are going to be hearing a lot about, I hope, because it's focused on social justice. It's called the Greenwich International Film Festival, and I saw some incredible films there that were dealing with really tough social issues, but from a really warm storytelling, focusing on characters and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's hard to pick.
Like, there's so many, which is really awesome for you guys. The thing that, when you think about your film festival strategy, is there any advice that you would give someone as they're rolling out their documentary projects?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't know if I would do what I did for this project. This was my first feature. So I mentioned earlier I worked for PBS. So it's really easy with PBS. You know where it's going to end up at the end. So you don't have to worry about film festivals or distribution or that sort of thing. So this has been a learning experience for me. But yeah, I mean, I think I probably would wait longer for one of the bigger festivals. And we didn't really do that. I mean, the first festival that we were excited about that we got accepted to was Vail, and we went. And I think maybe things would have been differently if we would have waited for one of the bigger festivals to see if we got in.
Who do you consider the bigger festivals for documentary?
Well, the obvious ones, I mean, would be Sundance and TIFF and all of those. But there's also great ones like Hot Docs and AFI Docs and that sort of thing. And I say this because we just, about a month ago, were accepted into the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival, which we're going to play at in a couple weeks. And that is one of the biggest Jewish film festivals in the world. And it's our film's not Jewish at all. They're just doing I
was going to ask the connection, but I was hoping you'd just tell me. They're doing a day that's focused on social impact and repairing the world. So gotcha.
That's why we're playing there. But the day that their calendar was announced, we were just flooded with other Jewish film festivals and Jewish organizations that were really interested in showing our film and programming us. And I don't know if they'll pick us because we're not a Jewish film, but it was really interesting to see that, wow, when you are at that highest level, then instead of sending submissions in, you are getting requests for screeners. So the role sort of flips. So I think that, that was really helpful to see, at least within this sort of niche market, and maybe something that I would do differently next time.
Gotcha. So, okay, so we talked about the film festival. So after you finish your festival run, what are you hoping for in terms of distribution for the doc?
Yeah, we have sales representation. So hopefully we'll get a broadcast deal soon in the U.S. and we can announce broadcast dates. But we have spent almost as much time in making the film as we have on the education campaign. So the University of Michigan School of Education and their Women's Center, the Center for the Education of Women, they came on board at the very early stages of post-production, and I was a fellow for the Women's Center, and so they supported me kind of in post and then connected me to the School of Ed. And they made these incredible lesson plans. So we have 8 lesson plans that are for high school and early college students, and they focus on using art to talk about women's issues. So the same themes as the film, but we didn't just want it to be in like a women's studies class or something like that. We tried to make it more cross-disciplinary so that it can fit into an econ class or into an art class or into a social studies class. And the lessons they came up with are really cool. I mean, they're things like the objectification of women in music, or how to use graphic design to talk about social issues, or poetry and spoken word to talk about social issues. So it's and the law and gender-based violence, and looking at, but not in a boring way, like in a really engaging way. You're actually reading laws from around the world related to domestic violence or gender-based violence. And
that was one of the things that surprised me when you said, like, when the woman that in Brazil there were no laws to protect her when she first needed them. It's like, that surprised the shit out of me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, up until 2006, there was no law in Brazil that protected women from domestic violence. And that was kind of one of the things that Penmela, she didn't hear about this law until 2 years after it had been passed.
Wow.
So it wasn't just, it was celebrated, this law was celebrated by women's rights activists and the legal community, but on the ground, it wasn't really useful if women who were suffering from domestic violence had no idea they now had these new rights and these new protections. So that's why Penmela took to the streets. She was like, everyone needs to know about this law. And that's where it started. So we kind of expanded on that. So beyond the Brazilian law in this lesson, students will learn about laws in the U.S. and in other parts of the world. How do you
get the curriculum to the students? Like, who kind of takes the lead on that? We are in part in the School of Michigan. The University of Michigan is going to help us also push it out. So it's not released yet. We're going to release it in the first week of September, right after Labor Day. And back to school time.
Exactly, yeah. And try and get students and teachers, hopefully get students to say, hey, we want to do this, and show it to their teachers.
You're going to go to the students first. That's really smart. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. And then we're also, beyond the lesson plans, we're doing a lot of community screening. So we have some really strong community partners and organizations that are going to show the film in churches and community theaters, in different organizations, auditoriums on campus, and that sort of thing. So, and those requests are coming in now, which is really exciting. So we're starting to see, wow, we're going to have a screening in Australia, and there's going to be a festival in Germany in September. So this film is global in scope, and that was new for me, and it's great to see that it's actually going to be shown globally, and we're starting to get it translated into different languages and all that. So yeah, it's really exciting.
That is really exciting. I really wish that your cinematographer was here, because I want to shake her hand. But let's see, going back to the directing aspect of it, one of the things that I noticed is that you allow yourself to be a part of the film at a certain point in terms of asking questions for your subjects or to your subjects. So my question would be, what spurred that choice on? This is the craft part of the
totally. Yeah, we can geek out. I actually, one cut of the film, a very early rough cut, I narrated it. So I was much more present. And I don't actually think I didn't want to be a narrator or a character in the film. We don't have any footage of me interviewing people on camera or anything like that. I never wanted to be so present in the film, but it was part of my writing process, actually, was figuring out the story arc and the story that needed to be told. And then after that first rough cut, when I actually heard myself in voiceover for 90 minutes, I think it was 2 hours at that point, so it was even longer. It's like, okay, this is way too much. And had a conversation with my cinematographer and co-producer, who's her name's Mina Singh. She's incredibly talented. And we both just said, no, I don't need to be in it. So, and then recut the whole thing without any voiceover. And then only really using my voice in those interviews as ways to insert things that weren't maybe coming across without that voice. So it was a way to get around the voiceover, but still get those driving questions. I think specifically with Sister Pha. So there are moments where she's, for people who haven't seen the film yet, she's basically dedicated her life to ending female genital cutting, but she has a life that's worth living. She has moved to Berlin. She fell in love. She married someone who lived, that's the reason she went to Berlin, was for this man. She had a daughter with him, and we met her daughter. Her daughter's beautiful, 6 years old. And she's really struggled to maintain a normal life with all of this work that she's doing, traveling, going on tour, and performing all over the world. So it was really important to me to show that sacrifice and to make it really clear. And she's a really like bright and sunny personality. So it was, she wouldn't necessarily admit, yeah, it's hard to leave my daughter without being sort of pressed on it. So that that was when it felt important, I guess, to have that voice in there.
How about the, if you don't mind me asking, the funding aspect of it? Because that seems really expensive to go all around the world.
Yeah.
To catch up with your subjects. Were you self-funding at first, or did you start out applying for grants, or how did you get started with the funding?
It started with crowdfunding. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So the seed money, and the nice thing, I mean, it's not cheap to film all over the world, but having these 4 separate stories, it wasn't like we needed to raise all of the production funds up front to shoot the whole thing. It was like we'd raise enough, and then we'd go to India for 3 weeks, and then we'd come back, and then we'd raise more money, and then we'd go to Brazil for 2 weeks, then we'd come back. So the nature of the project just allowed us to sort of piecemeal. And after that initial crowdfunding, I just started writing grants because I was able to shoot. And so then I had footage and I could cut trailers together and, that sort of thing, and was able to write grants and get foundation support and then individual donors. Once they kind of saw what you had that you were working with or working towards, it was totally. And the crowdfunding was sort of great in like building a community right off the bat. So we now have a 4,000 person email list, and yeah, and no, that's a lot. It's growing. Thank you. But it's been ongoing. I mean, this started 4.5 years ago from that very first campaign. And because the response was so positive and people were just really enthusiastic about the project, it was great motivation for me too, as an independent filmmaker, to get it done and to see it. I'd committed in front of all my friends and family, and everyone they know that this was going to happen. So there was never any doubt that we wouldn't finish what we started. Very cool. So, so you're going to be broadcasting somewhere soon. You have a few more festivals coming up at least. Can you tell me, let's say through the end of the year, who do you have coming up? Sure. Well, there's the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival. We're also going to be at High Peak Independent Film Festival, and we're nominated for 3 awards, which is super exciting. Congratulations. Thank you. And we'll be at a film festival in Berlin in September, Without Borders Film Festival. Awesome. And oh my gosh, now I'm blanking out on all of them. We have a list on our website. Okay, perfect. So what's your website? Yeah, it's littlestones.org. And there's going to be community screenings all over the place too. So that's, if you want to see the film and we're not coming to a festival, then definitely sign up to host a community screening, because we really want to have that kind of outreach. And that's on your website also? Yep. There's a form that you fill out, and we make it really easy. People can actually use it to raise money for women's organizations or for arts organizations. So a lot of filmmakers don't want you to sell tickets to your community screenings, but we totally support that. We want people to use this film to raise awareness and also to support the right organizations. And if there are teachers who want the curriculum, once that's available, will they be able to find that on your website also? Yes, that'll all be available to download from our website. So for now, everyone should just join our mailing list, because then they will get updates about all of this stuff. They don't have to write it down. And are you on social media personally? Yes, personally, and we have a Little Stones Facebook and Instagram. Awesome. Well, thank you. I almost forgot. Okay, last question. What are you excited about that's not related to movies right now? Right now, I moved to LA less than a year ago. So right now I'm just exploring the city and I'm loving California life. I'm from Michigan where it's like cold.
Yes.
So not right now. It's July now, but it's really hot now, but not having a winter was great. And, starting to explore hiking and going to the beach and doing that in the same day. I mean, California's great. So that's what I'm into.
Okay. So that means everybody should come to California. Ready, set. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you guys also for listening. And definitely check her out at littlestones.org.
You've been listening to Directing Magic with Marquette Jones. Be sure to visit directingmagic.com for past episodes and other information relating to the show. Also, be sure to subscribe and rate and comment on iTunes. Until next time, bye-bye.